Absolutely. It's good to be in the studio.
And let's
love
start.
Your theme music.
Thank you very much. And let's start with a little self-identification, a little bit more.
Yeah.
For people who don't know your work, you're serious sometimes, you're funny most of the time?
We'll see how it turns out today, but that's about the right balance. I mean, I've been doing stand-up comedy for just over 8 years. My anniversary was a few weeks ago, but I also care. So I've been an activist. I definitely campaigned on my own time for Obama. I vote. I pay taxes most of the time. So I'm
Jack and Jill is not mostly a comedy site. The Onion is. Jack and Jill is
Jack
not.
and Jill Politics is a very, pretty straight political analysis with a lot of cleverness and wit, but it's certainly not a comedy site, though it may cause you to laugh sometimes. There's a big watermelon on the page.
So let's dive in to the idea of being American. There are probably about as many definitions for what it means to identify American as there are Americans. But you think that something fundamental about identity is being resolved in the Arizona immigration law debate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you have, and I think there's an interesting overlap between what's happening in Arizona, what you see happening as a reaction to Obama, what you see in a reaction in the growth of this very angry Tea Party, and the Pew study which came out recently, which talked about the anger in the American electorate, which was largely in certain segments of the white American electorate. There's a sense of loss. There's a sense of like, this is not my America. You keep hearing this refrain, and no one's quite clearly defining what it is, but it's certainly not the demographically trending browner, younger America that makes people very comfortable. There's a sense of America's changing, and I'm not a part of that change, and I'm a little concerned about that.
And this is going to be a big discussion among many of our listeners with us, so we're going to open up the phones right now, and we'll deal with different aspects of this question every Thursday in May with Baratunde Thurston. So call in and reflect on your own version of what it means to be American. How do you identify with that term? What does it really mean to you? Did the Arizona immigration law dust-up make you think about that question anew or any differently? And what about any of you who fit in to that large portion in the Pew survey who feels like an America that you know and value is getting lost since the recession and the bailout and the health care law and maybe on another side of politics from the Arizona immigration law? 212-433-WNYC. 212-433-9692. Starting on this series very basically, what does it mean to you to be an American? How do you identify with that term? And if you're an immigrant, we definitely want to hear from you. African American, Latino, Asian American, love to get a lot of different ethnic diversity and all other kinds of diversity into this mix. 212-433-9692 for Baratunde Thurston, or post to our webpage at wnyc.org. Click on Brian Lehr Show. Baratunde, the Consortium for Police Leadership and Equity, which is a research group that focuses on police and racial profiling, is finishing up a report that you've been given access to. Can you tell us a little bit about the report, which focuses on an immigration law not in Arizona but coming to the fore in Utah right now is trying to show?
Absolutely. Utah has SB 81, which is much more narrow in scope versus the Arizona law, but it's about cross-deputizing police officials as federal immigration agents and having them do checks on the legal status of people who are in the criminal justice system. So if they've been pulled over for a DUI or they're in a jail, what the study looks at is what is the effect of a law like this on law enforcement and on its relationship with the community. And what you're finding in Arizona, what you found in Utah, with a lot of sheriffs coming out big time saying, we don't want to do this job. This may be a failure of the federal government, but it undermines our ability to keep the community safe when people feel threatened by police, not necessarily keeping communities safer, but by doing intimidation tactics or paperwork, essentially doing the job maybe the federal government was supposed to do. So what the study really looks at is this going to reduce immigration? Is it going to reduce crime? Or does it have some softer value?
Tell us a little bit more about this idea of cross-deputization.
Yeah.
The phrase that's in the potential Utah immigration law?
Well, and once again, there's a law up in Utah which looks a lot like Arizona that's being proposed, but there's an existing one on the books that is already narrower in scope. And essentially, it's what Sheriff Arpaio in Arizona wants to do. The government's not doing anything, so let's us as local and state police take this immigration law and enact it ourselves. And what it asks the police to do is become federal immigration enforcers, to determine the citizenship status of reasonably suspicious people, which is a very vague sort of term, and decide whether they should stay or they should go. And the problem that this creates is, one, you really reduce the level of crime reporting. Whether immigrants, whether legal or not, don't trust whether or not they can go to the cops if that cop is then going to ask them to show me your papers. And that makes the whole community a lot less safe.
John in Farmingdale, you're on WNYC. John, thanks a lot for calling.
Okay, well, two things. It is kind of sad that we're losing our white European identity. It was probably inevitable, but it's no one voted on this. And if you think about it, a lot of it was due to illegal immigration. But let that pass, because that eventually would have gone by the wayside. I'm a strong defender of the Arizona law because they're going to stop people only with reasonable suspicion. And look, if certain immigrants do not have their documentation, they really shouldn't be here. And it's that simple. It's a reasonable law. The federal government wasn't doing anything about it, and no one was sealing the border. So
let me separate those two things for a minute, John. The Arizona law is one thing, and illegal immigration is one thing. But when you talk about losing our white identity, what is that white identity? Why is that the American identity rather than, say, the identity with the Constitution and our set of laws and values?
Well, because predominantly we were settled by white Europeans in America. There's nothing deep about it, nothing constitutional about it. It's just a cultural fact. And
what is it in white identity that you think would get lost? As whites are headed to be a minority in the country, there would be no majority in the country if trends prevail in a few decades. What is it that would be lost? What are the qualities of that white?
A certain kind of attitude towards mankind, a kind of Western ideal that was developed in Europe and grew in America. I suspect that is what I'm getting at, yeah.
John, thank you very much.
Okay.
Baratunde.
I have to say, I too feel a deep loss of my white European identity as an American. I mean, look, America's a great idea, and we've struggled for centuries to kind of live up to that ideal. And that ideal is not so much based in specific European culture. It's enshrined in all of these documents, which have very lofty goals of equality and under the law that we all sort of ascribe to when we come here or when we're brought here. So I think that's the general goal of American identity. What it practically means is we have the right to eat double-fried foods and watch a lot of reality television and burn fossil fuels at an alarming rate. And that's something that I think all cultures can sort of agree on.
That's the onion side of Baratunde coming out.
That's just the truth coming
right
out.
There.